Welcome, everyone. On today's Do Now, you were explaining to me how you got your world news. How do you learn about events in the world? Um, is there a news station you watch? Do you look at like newspaper magazines or news websites like, say, CNN? Or do you rely on what you get through social media from other people on social media? Today and tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the media because a big part of a successful democracy is the people need to be informed to make good democratic decisions. So, one of our responsibilities as citizens of a democracy is to be informed of what's going on. So, we'll be talking about the media, um, which is freedom of the press. My slides might be a little out of order. There we go. And our First Amendment right is that the media, the press, the newspapers, news outlets have freedom. The government doesn't tell them what to say. The government does not own them. The government does not control them. And this is extremely important because we need an independent news agency that can investigate what the government's doing and can give us real facts. If you go to other countries, this isn't always the case. In Russia, China, North Korea, you can't trust the news. The news is whatever the government says, so it's not very reliable. Sometimes people like to call the media the fourth branch of government, right? It's that additional check on the government, right? Congress can check the president can check Congress. Well, the media checks them all and makes sure they're not abusing their power and informs on them to the people. They get the nickname the watchdog, right? They're watching, they're looking out, they're making sure, and if something goes wrong, they bark. They let everyone know. Yeah, a few political cartoons we're going to be looking at. Here we got one we've seen before, that democracy is being held up by the pillars, and the pillars of democracy are freedom of press, right? The news outlets that keep our democracy functioning. And we got this cartoon. We've got people using newspapers, First Amendment, freedom of the press as a telescope to watch, like, the Capitol, to watch DC, City Hall, that it is watching and making sure and looking out for people. So it's important to know when we check our news, especially nowadays, it's not always news, right? You go to like CNN, Fox News, ABC News, all those places, they have news updates, but they also have something called analysis where you have reporters and people in the press sharing their opinion. Their opinion is not news, their opinion is not fact. Right? It's hard because these lines are a little bit blurred where news agencies sometimes report things that is more opinion than fact. So we got to be careful what we're getting from the news. Right? Um, Also, sometimes you've seen this a lot with like clickbait, is headlines and stories don't always match. So sometimes news puts up big headlines that they know you're going to read, but in the story, maybe that's not entirely true. So their headlines aren't always accurate. So when you're reading something, you see something online, don't base it on the headline. Read the story. Usually the story has a little bit more details and some understanding of what's going on. And we have to recognize that some of our news agencies are biased, meaning they favor one side over the other. They're trying to manipulate you to think something. They're trying to get you to look a certain way or think a certain way. Sometimes people read news and they're looking for confirmation of what they already believe. So people with very conservative beliefs read conservative news. Are they getting real information? Sometimes. Same on the other side. Liberals will read liberal news outlets. Are they always getting the truth, though? Not really. All right, and you got very extremes. We got CNN and Fox News. I'll show some examples of what's going on with those channels. But you can have the same story looked at from very different perspectives. All right, so this is a confusing graphic, but the higher up you are on this, the more reliability, the more truthful it tends to be. The further down, the worse it is. But if you go far to the left over here, these are very biased, meaning these are very much liberal, pushing an agenda, trying to manipulate you. Then over here is very conservative, trying to manipulate you. So this up at the top in the middle is the most reliable sources. You can see, this is our line, is that most of our media sources are a little bit biased towards liberals, meaning they're a little bit more favorable towards like Biden and Democrats than they are towards Trump and Republicans. Here's an example of some different news sources so you know which way they lean. So places like CNN, CBS, ABC, NBC, they all lean a little bit left, meaning they're a little bit more like they like Democrats a little bit more. Some of these over here are very left leaning. These ones over here, like Fox News, tend to lean Republican. The ones in the middle are the most fair. Here's a cartoon that illustrates this. All right, during Trump's 4 years, they were wearing Hillary shirts, the press, and they were resisting the president. Fight back, watch the president, be the watchdog. But now that Biden's president, they're wearing Biden shirts, saying, hey, let's all work together. Let's all figure out the government's the good guy. Right? So it's kind of showing the bias of media. Today, we're going to be reading about the media and its role and answering different levels of questions.